All right, welcome to episode 5 of the Fundable Founder. We've got Grant Deken today,
Hey,
founder
Charlie.
of Unstack, which is
Awesome.
right there if I'm just in the way of the sign for Unstack.
I was about to ask you. I didn't see it, so
Yeah,
it's
it's
about to
just
leave the
behind the
podcast.
shoulder. And so tell us, let's jump off. What's your elevator pitch for Unstack? What is it?
Yeah, so our vision is to make non-technical teams, give them the superpowers that traditionally software engineers have had to build, measure, and scale their ideas on digital. So we really focus on building no-code tools for creating web content, things like websites, landing pages, payments, running a subscription business, all those tools that people need. Content analytics integrations, we package all that up, and we help typically founders, early stage teams. But as we've grown, we've helped lots of large companies as well accelerate, giving those non-technical team members the tools they need to build without having to work with software engineers or experienced designers, things like that.
Yeah, and I can attest that I'm a happy customer as well. I actually, if you go to the Mass Ventures website, mass-ventures.com, I built that by myself in a matter of hours and required no code on my part. And I updated on almost a daily or weekly basis, almost instantly without any issues. So, and now we've got it integrated with other platforms and other things and doing some of the analytics. So happy customer as well.
Awesome. Thanks for that plug.
Yeah. So what's your origin story, Grant? I know you're wearing the grapevine hat right now. Maybe let's talk about your journey into entrepreneurship and then move into why did you create Unstack?
Yeah. I wore the grapevine hat because that's how you and I met. I think so. Just going back before grapevine, I mean, I spent my whole career, I think, even when I was a teenager, tinkering around with websites and coming up with ideas and trying to build them, which probably makes sense now that I'm building Unstack, right? That's kind of the ultimate fulfillment of my experience as a teenager. But I started out in the marketing side of things and got into more like the technical marketing side. I worked for a couple startups within marketing, and then I decided to start a company. This is in the sort of performance marketing, affiliate marketing space. Saw how hard it was to build software there. I learned a ton of lessons, learned how to code through that because I had to.
Right.
Worked with engineers and just made, I think, like every mistake in the book, but it was, kind of what I would call my MBA, my non-traditional MBA, and kind of learning how to build businesses, particularly startups and digital businesses. And that experience, I actually, at the end of that, I said, I'm getting out of startups. It's not, I need to take a break. And so I went and I worked at MIT for about a year as a UX developer, working on they were rebuilding their learning management platform. And through that, I realized how much I loved the early stage, loved building things, loved moving super fast and
Right.
being able to have that impact. And that was really missing for me when I was working at MIT, much larger organization. They did like 2 major product releases a year and then like 2 patch releases intra semester. And so it was really like a totally different experience. Also learned a lot and appreciated it. But I was like, man, I gotta go back into the startup world. And I had met somebody through the Cambridge Innovation Center in Kendall Square, a guy named Brendan Luttrell who was working on this business. At the time, it was called Moving Metrics, and I thought it was like a really interesting idea. It was explained to me as like as seen on TV, but for the YouTube generation. So
Yep.
this is all like before influencers kind of became a thing. And I thought, oh, that's I haven't really seen that. That's pretty interesting. And then quickly realized that these YouTubers at the time, these were like 17, 18-year-old teenagers doing makeup videos and tutorials and things like that. But they were getting more viewership, more distribution than like primetime TV shows on
Right.
the Discovery Channel and stuff. So it was clearly a shift in behavior, a shift in consumption. Mobile was really becoming much more prolific in our daily lives. And so I joined that company as the head of product, really helped to build out one of the first marketplaces and sort of workflow platforms for the influencer space. And Charlie, as through lots of lessons and I think hardships about halfway through that journey, we did a major reset. And as a part of that, I then had the I would call it the begrudging opportunity to become the CEO of that company, and did that for about 2.5 years through the exit. We were acquired, and kind of at the end of that, I had kind of tired on the influencer as a kind of the customer that I showed up to fight for every day.
Right.
And I love working with founders and entrepreneurs and hearing about people's like big ideas, and everyone's building such cool stuff out there. I like look at the logos behind you, like there's so many cool companies out there. But horizontally, like everybody struggles with the like, how do I get my digital presence going? How do I measure things? Like what's working, what's not? How do I move faster? Like how do I test stuff? Whether you're a tech company or you're a service business, like it's all becoming requisite for building. And so was kind of the idea. We kept seeing that pattern over and over and decided, hey, let's go build a platform that's sort of the idyllic platform if I were starting something new, and let's get that in the hands of everybody and help everybody build their ideas.
Great. No, I love it. And, we'll get into the funding side of things in a minute, but, your journey accomplished a lot because you were able to establish a good relationship with a lot of venture capitalists and a lot of angel investors in your experience at Grapevine, right? And so I think that really set you up to be able to raise money for Unstack, right? Because you were kind of this known commodity all of a sudden, even though Unstack was really your first business that you founded, right? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think Unstack is the first company where I really from nothing tried to like breathe something into life and went through the whole process of like really raising capital. We've done a couple of rounds now, and yeah, I think that's totally right. I think as much as investors love to make money, the best thing you can do for them is not lose their money, which is also part of the success, I think, of Grapevine. And so I think the other part of that is building great relationships, and I think you and I have worked together and I've worked with a lot of people where it's we're working on this company, but I think about the relationship I have with people over 20 years, not 2 years, or
right,
3
exactly.
years, and so it's really about this long term, building great relationships, working together, that kind of stuff.
So when you decided to launch Unstack and you went out to raise the first bit of money, kind of what was your strategy around raising money? Was it to bootstrap a little bit, go raise some friends and family before approaching VCs? I mean, how did you think about it? And what did you want to create or have traction on before you really approached VCs?
Yeah, I'd love to say that we had this like really intentional strategy about like exactly when and how we'd raise money, and like we'd have these KPIs. It didn't really happen that way. I think it was more organic. We were like, when's the right time to raise money? Like, is this fundable, and in what context? So we started out and just said, hey, like let's get some customers. Let's start to like. I didn't want to raise money until I really believed in it, and I think that's like my biggest thing is if you don't have the conviction and can't tell the story, and you're just not just overwhelmingly in it, I think it's hard to go out and sell that. And so we actually held back a little bit early on, said like, let's really work on this. Like, let's really figure out what our conviction is around this problem. And then we'll go out and talk to those, investors. Cause again, going back to the relationship, right? You wouldn't sell something to somebody that you don't believe in it, right? You have to believe. And so that was kind of organically, I think we worked towards that, and then felt like, okay, let's go talk to folks and let them know where we're at. And, I think to go from, we had made, a little bit of progress, but then I think about each round that we raised, it's like, okay, how do I think 10X from where we are now, in terms of, just each sort of skate is an order of magnitude. And so it's like, okay, we had made a little progress. How do we 10X? What do we need to do that? Okay, well, we need to do a pre-seed round. And then we made a good bit of traction there. And I said, okay, well, how do we 10X again? And it's like, well, we probably need to raise a little bit more to accomplish that. So again, the capital being very much a tool, not just sort of like a box to check.
Right. So when you raised your pre-seed round, you went around to a variety of angels and VCs for that round. I think, what were some of the lessons learned on raising that pre-seed round?
I think that I think the biggest thing is I probably relied more on my relationships than on investing the time to really practice and learn and get the story right. And I'll be honest, like I was able to use the relationships I had, I think, to get pretty far. That if you don't have relationships, it'll be a little harder. If you do, great, but that will only get you so far anyways in the long term.
Right.
The big thing was like, if I were to go back and do that again, I think just like being super vigilant about putting the time in and practicing 100 times and really thinking about the story you're telling, even if it's for people that you already know, I think is something that is super important. So, our first few pitches were super rocky, and I think that's for everybody, right? Like, no matter if you've done it before and you're like, this is your 10th company or it's your first time, like, no, but you got to work the kinks out. So don't go to your perfect ideal investor on your first pitch. Like, maybe warm it up with a couple friendly people who are going to shoot you straight, give you some feedback, and kind of help set you up for success for those later conversations. So find a couple of those allies, sounding boards early on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, that's certainly something I've done with my startups, and it often takes probably 15, 20, 25 pitches to really get in your groove, I find, right?
100%. One of the things that's interesting now, I was talking to somebody else about this on a podcast, is in the world of Zoom, there's a lot more opportunity to watch film.
Yep.
Like in sports, and you go back and analyze, your performance. Where were you strong? Where did you kind of falter? I remember pitching an angel group that I'm now a part of, TBD Angels, and I had the recordings, was able to go back and watch it and be like, oh, I really need to that is not a crisp answer. I need to really think about that. So I look for those opportunities to improve. It's just a game of inches and improving.
How do you balance the feedback that VCs give you or angels give you about, I mean, I know every time we see someone, I always want to give them some advice, and it's probably contradictory to other VCs or the advice they're giving them. Like sometimes, I might say, oh, you need to raise a bigger round. And the next person they go to says you need to raise a smaller round. Or, the next person might say, you need to add 2 people to your team. And the other person might say you have too many people on your team. How do you balance kind of the advice that you get from VCs and angels along the way and not stray from your vision too much?
Yeah, I think it's hard, especially as a younger entrepreneur and you're still learning and, seeking out feedback from maybe more seasoned folks. It's ultimately your job to take in lots of feedback, almost like a funnel, and distill it down and kind of really understand, okay, what are the things that I want to act on? Or maybe also what are the patterns I'm seeing? I asked 10 people for advice. 7 of those people had something similar to say, maybe that's where I want to key in. And not all advice is good advice. People don't typically, sometimes they do, but typically don't know your business as well as you do. So you have to really, I think, be sensitive to that, really break it down, figure out what's important. You have to distill that out.
What do you say was, maybe in this, when you raised your pre-seed round, what was some of the best advice you received along the way that you think helped you with raising the round?
I think when we went out to raise it, we were preaching about this big horizontal problem. And I still feel that that's exactly true in the case, and it's a very big market. I think some of the feedback we got was, hey, we totally get it, but tell us more about your core customer, the one person you're fighting for, and what's the focus there. And, I think especially early on, it can be easy to say, hey, we're going after these 4 things. And candidly, it's something we still talk about. We have now 2 core customers that we really serve. We've whittled that down as we've learned, who are the best people. But that was feedback that we got early on. It was, hey, tell, where are you really focused on making sure that really came through? Because we get the big vision, it totally makes sense, but tell us about that. So that, to us, that was really specific feedback that we got.
How would that change your pitch then? Did you eliminate the big vision altogether, or did you say at the beginning of your pitch, our vision is to do X, but we're going to start with Y? Or did you do a pitch that was, this is our target core customer, and then at the very end, oh, by the way, we have this big vision to go after, the entire ecosystem?
No, I think we still lead with vision, that in the big opportunity, because that has to be I think, where you start, and then you kind of shift and tell the story through the lens a little bit more of that customer.
Yep.
Hey, here's what they're doing today, right?
Yep.
And it's really, here's what marketers are doing today. They're overtasked with all these projects. They've got these ideas. They're trying to execute, and what happens, right? They have to go and work with developers or find a consultant, and so you start telling, okay, here's where the pain is. Here's where the pain is, and we're taking all that off the table because it shouldn't be that hard. I still have this really big vision, but I'm now getting really micro and telling you, here's what's happening at sort of on the daily basis to the customer that we're serving. And you're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. It's, I love it when people start with the big vision, but then tell me how they're going to execute on their seed round, right? Like, you can't boil the ocean with pre-seed or seed money. You got to figure out the exactly microscopic level that you're going to invest that money and what you're going to accomplish and what you've already figured out about going after that specific piece.
One other thing I'd say for people interested in raising money is I have never called a VC or gotten a meeting and had that VC or investor turn around and say, I'm in.
Right.
Sometimes with angels, if it's through a referral, and there's a lot of conviction, like, okay, I get it, like I'm in, and it's usually a smaller check. The point I'm making is, when anybody thinking about raising money, if you're thinking about raising in six months, then you need to be developing relationships right now and helping bring people along with you, so that when you're ready to start going out and asking for those checks, you've built relationships, you've built trust, they already understand your metrics, understand your business, they know where you need help, they can be helpful.
Yep.
And they probably have 3 or 4 people on top of their mind that they can introduce you to. So start doing those like monthly investor updates, which, we're super busy. I recently missed, I try to do them monthly, now I'm doing them quarterly, as we get a little further along. But those updates, I think, are really helpful for when you're ready to actually go out and raise. It's probably if there's anything someone took away from this, I would actually say that's probably the most important thing, especially for first time founders.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. I think, when I used to do monthly updates, it just kept me on my toes, right? And made sure I understand which pieces of the business were working and which were not. But at the same time, I would also go in and update my deck so that I was ready to pitch on a moment's notice if I had to. So, but fundraising doesn't stop once you've raised the first round, right? Most VCs want to know that you're going to go raise another round in about 18 months. So if you got to give yourself 6 months lead time, does that mean you could raise a round, kind of wait around for 12 months and then go raise another round, or what's your strategy?
It's a good question. I mean, yeah, there is I think in the world we're in now, there's this perpetual expectation that like building big, requires, many tranches of capital. And that's oftentimes the case. It's not always the case. I think regardless of if your plans to, raise, numerous rounds of capital or not, I think you just have that try to be a very transparent founder, I think, is always going to serve you well, because it's not always about money, right? It's also about network. It's about recruiting amazing people. Like, that's honestly, like, recruiting the best people is harder than raising money, in my opinion. So like, I just think that the pattern, or sort of the common denominator, is like, try to be transparent, consistent, and build those relationships so that you can draw on them, and also try to find ways you can give value to your investors as well. So oftentimes people reach out to me with a question, hey, how'd you do this, or do you know somebody for this role? Happens all the time. So it's a two-way, to give and a take.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And I agree. I mean, both finding good people and finding the right partners or investment partners are challenging. But I do think they're somewhat correlated, right? You want to find the right business partners who share the same passion that you do and understand the problem, and it might have the same work ethic towards achieving success. And you're probably looking for VCs that fit those qualities as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it's very much a partnership. It's a long-term partnership oftentimes. And I think as a founder, you should think about it as an interview in a lot of ways. How can those partners help accelerate things beyond the capital? Have they done it before?
Yep.
Those are important. And then also culture fit,
Yeah.
like what happens when shit hits the fan? Because sometimes, that's right around the corner. You never know, right? When that's going to happen. Well, how do we come together and solve that?
It's amazing how you see the people that step up when the shit does hit the fan and the people who don't. So it happens both with investors and co-founders.
Yeah, 100%.
Any last parting words of wisdom? Anything we didn't touch on that you'd like to share?
Work with Mass Ventures if you can. You guys have been great. We through two different companies, just been great partners to me, and appreciate everybody there. If I can be helpful, people can find me at grant@unstack.com. If you want to exchange notes or just chat about startups, or we can help you with marketing, we're always available.
Yeah, I think that's an important note, right? Like a lot of first-time founders who are out there on this journey to raise money should be leaning on other people who've been successful at raising money and launching businesses. For the most part, are very willing to help and be mentors along the way. So that's a great piece of advice. So last question, how would you describe yourself in one word?
Right now, I would say energized.
Energized. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Right now, a lot of good energy. So I keep it going. Might be the coffee, but ask me again in an hour.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Grant. Really appreciate it. Good luck with everything at Unstack.
Thanks. Great to be on the show, Charlie.
Great. Thank you.
To innovate, invent, and disrupt? We're your partner to fuel your growth. Contact us to learn more.